Hello and welcome to another interview on the Inonda podcast. Find out more at inonda.co.uk.
I like to keep it quite casual and just get straight into it and just understand more about your background and your history, because we've met a few times now, but and this is part of the Inonda podcast naturally, but I like to just kick things off and keep it casual and just get into the meaty stuff, which is realistically all about you, Paul, because since I met you, it's been fascinating speaking to you. Our interactions have been filled with value. So I'm really looking forward to just understanding more, because like your guitar playing skills, this is something I didn't know. And I don't know too much about how you started expert learning, what prompted you to start it, and what's the journey been like, because it's been 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Have
So
I got
it
that
was
wrong?
our 21st birthday in April, kind of April the 1st. I've always said that we've been April Fools for 21 years with the business. But it was ironic that we actually sold the business on April the 1st as well, or just before. So it was kind of, what a coincidence, to have it exactly to 21 years as a kind of a sign-off. Of course, I'm still involved, so, as a strategic advisor to the business that bought us. But it's an interesting story of just coming here and seeing the place from as a holiday maker, and then thinking, this is back in the day when there was only a couple of roads and half a dozen hotels. So I guess we could see the potential for the future in Dubai. And I think that's probably what started my interest in, building business, or the potential of running and owning businesses in this region, because it was just opening up to that idea. There were, back in the day, there weren't any free zones. There wasn't an easy setup process. But, very quickly into my tenure here, after probably 2 or 3 years, they started the first internet city and a media city, and it's grown from there. But I think everybody knows the Dubai story. But I certainly saw that as the city had potential, business had the potential as well, and that's where we decided to take a leap of faith into the e-learning industry. And of course, back in those days, there was nothing. People didn't understand what an e-learning course was, what a learning management system was, what talent management systems did. So there was a lot of educating the market back in the day. Yeah, it was slow. It was very organic, and it took a while. And then within sort of 3 years, there was 17 companies set up, all promising e-learning to their clients. And then what was happening was they were coming back to us and saying, "Oh, we've got a deal. Can we work with you?" Because they didn't actually have anything. So I guess what we intended to do, which is typical of a kind of Dubai franchise holding company, we became agents, and we went after sort of the biggest players, so to partner with, because we felt that if we were involved with the largest e-learning companies, the largest learning and management software and talent software businesses, the largest student management information system companies, if we could create those partnerships, we would always be on the map. So when they were looking out and Googling for, who does this, that, and the other, we tend to get at the top of the tender list. And I think that was important to have the right brands, with us and on board. So it was a lot more about, I guess, vendor management and relationship building. And then once we've got that portfolio, then it was about finding the right organizations and what their entry level affordability would be, whether they're just going to try a few e-learning courses, or they were going to go all in and do a full integrated hire to retire system from a corporate standpoint. So so very, very organic, very test the marketplace. And it felt like it was, a long time, but actually within a couple of years we were profitable and on the right track.
Yeah. So talk me through that. When you were approached by your business partner, what was the idea behind expert learning? Was it to create a few e-learning courses and
No,
position yourself as the
yeah,
distributor out in Dubai? Or how did it start off?
yeah. So my business partner Janine was, already working to some extent in the education industry, and to be honest, the company that she worked with almost sent her on a mission to find out more about it, to see if digital learning space, if it was the right time, and to be fair, she did most of the legwork, and then we met through some other circumstances, and then she said, look, I think there's an opportunity. I went back to my business, and they said no, they didn't think it was the right time. And she said, but I think it is. And I said, well, tell me a bit more about it. And I guess the irony is that I started life as an electrical engineer, and that was to fix my guitars and amplifiers. By the way, that's why I got into that side. And then it was at the era when home computers came in. So having that sort of mindset on the electronics side, I kind of quickly developed skills in the computer side from hardware and software and coding. So I kind of, part of my career had been in that side. And then the other part, I fell into training and development and worked with kind of local government back in the UK for 6 years. And I was either on a course because I was learning something or delivering a course. So with that in mind, those were the two things that I could bring to the party. And I think that wherever you're looking for, kind of partnerships or people, to get involved as stakeholders, look for that skill set. And my skill set fit that side of it. Whereas my business partner's skill set was more about sort of, customer service and the financial side and operational side. So it was a good kind of marriage, if you will, from that perspective. And I think that, to be honest, the entrepreneurial road is tough, as you know, as a a single owner of a business. It's a lonely place when you've got problems. It's a great place when you haven't and you're on the up. But when you've got decisions to make, it's nice to bounce ideas from other people. And I guess now, as my kind of career has moved into investing and partnerships and new business, startups and everything else that I'm involved in, it's almost been for me about identifying the right talent that you could actually work with, as much as the thing, whether it's a product, a service, a solution. For me, I'd be looking at the people and where that talent fit is and where the gaps are. And I think that's been kind of the exciting part since I've kind of exited, and where I'm kind of, where I'm living at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I've realized as well, is having complementary skills amongst your team definitely helps a whole load, because you can't be a one-man island and be able to do everything. There are things that you're not going to be as good at as others.
Yeah,
It sounds like you met that person at the off with your business partner, Janine, because you had
yeah,
complementary skill sets. Did you
correct.
find, because that probably wasn't, me just assuming here, but that probably wasn't as obvious when you kicked things off.
No.
When was the point that you realized that these A players make a big difference, and when did your mindset shift towards that kind of, okay, now I understand how business grows, I need to find these types of people?
Yeah, I think it took a while. I think that you have to come to terms with the industry. You have to go and talk to a lot of organisations that are going to lock the door. So there's a lot of roadblocks on route. So I think you have to find, some of them are hard knocks, I guess. So you have to be relatively thick-skinned. Of course, I think it helped that I've got quite a strong background in sales and marketing. So I had the training, the engineering, the sales and marketing, which I did overseas for 13 years. And actually that tour operator thing and working in hotels is all about sales and marketing. So I guess that was an area that I would have those strengths. And although I think from the financial side, I've always invested, so I've always been a keen investor from way back. Always put money aside and then look at vehicles for investing. I wasn't really the type of guy that would look at what's coming in, what's out, the outgoings, the incomings, and pulling that all together. That kind of accountancy side. So I think it didn't take long to find our strengths, but I think the critical piece is when we got to sort of a 10-year-old organisation. You've broken your $1 million barriers, which is always a tough game. And then you're looking at how can we build some form of legacy, or how can we step back to be more strategic, and how can we build an executive committee. I think XCOM's really important in an organisation, because you'll realise that people can be better at sales and marketing. People could be better at operations and process and policy and things like this. And then you've got the tech team, and then you've got a customer success team, and then you've got a sales teams that you need to build. So what we did is we built that layer, beneath us that could take that responsibility. So having 5 or 6 people, as part of an executive committee, and then feeding back to where they thought the challenges were. I think that's a good sort of sign of a good CEO, where they're looking to, responsible decisions based on information that they receive from people that know. I think that was the next kind of step in our evolution as we wanted to grow.
Yeah. And talk to me through that evolution, because you mentioned the £1 million mark being a tough cookie to crack, and you've now it's your 21st birthday, so it's been past the business birthday. What was the evolution? At what points did you hit those landmarks, and what did that look like? So in terms of the way you went about finding that C-level board that helped with the experience, did that come in year 5? You mentioned year 10 there, and then now 20 years in, what does that evolution look like from the business?
It's great. I think these kind of interventions, these podcasts and this story is interesting for me, because you kind of reflect on, was there a particular time? I think, usually there is that 5-year time when you kind of go in, we've got 20 companies now, and 20 clients, and by the way, I can't manage these and do sales. What are we looking for next? So it tends to be organic. So you'll take one business development guy, then you'll take somebody that looks after customer success. So it's kind of steady. And I think, we weren't kind of big on, taking out from the business. So we weren't taking dividends at the end of each year, even though we were profitable. It was kind of, how do we reinvest back into the business? And usually for us, reinvesting was reinvesting in people, because we saw that people was part of the growth. I guess it depends on which product you're going to have, whether it sells itself, or whether this is and I think in HR tech and learning tech, it's very much a solution sales. It's very much a longer sales cycle. It's an education to the market. I think things have changed since the pandemic, because we're all doing this. We're all looking at screens a lot more, so everybody had to do it. So I think now, as we look at that change, I often said to the sales guys, it was so much more difficult when you had to sell the concept, and now everybody's doing it anyway. So, it was a lot easier everybody just understood it. So, when the market's educated, it's easier to sell. Having said that, though, it's easier for new players to come into the market. So you have much more competition then, and that is, that can be a challenge or that can be a blessing. I think, it's just healthy, and I think it's a cliche, but competition is always healthy. But I think if you've been there earlier, and I guess here's another good point. I think when you get to that sort of 10 years time, I think you're kind of making a decision whether you're going to be the kind of organization that's going to be a sales force, that you're going to have a huge sales team and you're going to push product, and it's all going to be about the products and services, and you're really going after that, almost that call center mentality. The other side of it is the balance of credibility, brand building, having 4 out of 5 stars and feedback and all that sort of customer success story. And I guess that depends really on the owners, how they're driving the business forward, what's important to them. Because when you get to a certain stage, you're gonna have to balance that, because you can sell a lot more, which is what you need to do. The growth's coming in, but then are you neglecting, looking after them in the right sense? Because even customer success and customer service people are actually sometimes the better salespeople, because they're trying to help, solve the problems, help them with a solution, make the solutions better, have new solutions coming in, without the heavy sales. So I think we took the road, if I'm honest, and again, I'm just reflecting, probably to go down more of a customer service. We had a bigger tech team, we had a bigger customer success team than we did a sales team. But I think there's a time when that happens, and sometimes in some organizations, the great organizations that get it right have that balance, so that they might spend a year with really going out there and building a sales capability and really going strong on sales and marketing, and then they'll pick up in the next year to say, wait a minute, we need to balance this out. And I think the best companies do that well, so that they're looking for both sides. But for small business, I think it's harder, because you need a lot of resources on both ends to balance that, to balance that table, if you will. I think it's you do go through these certain milestones. Of course, the simple milestones is revenue. You get. I guess for us, we sort of about, I want to say 15 years ago, when we kind of hit that mark, that we thought, yeah, we're somewhere. We actually won an award as part of one of the top 100 companies in Dubai, when they kicked that off many years ago. And I think that made us realise, okay, we've that's a good milestone. We've actually got credibility, we've got recognition, and that kind of award-winning organisation is kind of useful. And from that, it was really then to say, well, how do we're at this level now. Organically, we've grown. How can we inject a little bit more into this? And what, are we going to reinvest? Can we continuously reinvest? Of course, when you start a business, you're like this, and your profitability kind of follows a little bit, once you've kicked off the first couple of years. And then suddenly your profitability's up and down, and then this gradually sort of slides into, a few percent, a few points per year. So I think we got to a stage then when it's like, well, is this time to, to sell part of the business, which is what we did back in 2015. So we brought in a corporate who bought an equity stake in the business. And to be fair to them, they kind of introduced us to new markets, new territories, and that was a good move for us to get involved. At least, having some support from a financial perspective, and from a growth perspective, because I don't think we would have probably opened offices in India and Prague and Slovakia, and I think that was part of that story. So I guess really the message there is to find the right time. And I guess going back, if I'd have known, okay, so the first few years are going to be like this, the next couple of years are going to be, flattening out. Then you look for some investment in some way, whether it's private equity, venture capital, or whatever. And then after that, you look at your full exit. Those stories are so simple, to see now. But when you're going through it, you can't see the wood for the trees, I guess. So, but yeah, I mean, it turns out well. But a lot of the time, there are windows of opportunity, and it's which window are you going to go through? And I think that's back to the decision making and being better informed if you've got more eyes on it.
Yeah, a lot of people give investors and bring in VCs and outside investment a bad rap because you tend to, there's the possibility that you lose control, you pick a bad partner. What was the decision? How did you make that decision? Was it someone that came to you that said, I want to invest in your business, or did you actively seek out investment at that stage where you felt like, okay, was it because you kind of plateaued a bit and you thought, okay, we need to look at our options, and that was one of the options, or how did that present itself as an opportunity?
A bit of both. We were approached a couple of times. We felt, obviously you get some award recognition. It lights up a few people. But as we got into like the pandemic, that was more about talking about at ownership level. I think this is a good time to, to sell the business and to exit. So I guess really it's determined by where you are and what's happening in the market, and then you make that decision. And I think on that secondary stage, that was more about finding the right, strategic partnership, so that we over 30 employees at that time, and you don't want to just go to a private equity firm and with there's no real kind of brand integration. So we went to look for companies that we felt that we could elevate their business by being a part of it, and that's what we did with Leron Institute, who acquired us earlier this year. So I think, your question around, do they come or do you find? I think a bit of both, but I think CEOs and leaders should be proactive all the time. You should preempt that this is going to be a good time in the market, talk early, because it takes a long time. I mean, you can go through due diligence we were over a year with backwards and forwards with this, that, and the other. So it's, you have to have your mindset, 2 to 3 years forward nearly all the time. So look into where will we be in 2 to 3 years. And then if you're not where you want to be, so what do we do to change? I think you have to be quite systematic in your process of, where is your journey? I think it's easier for me, sat back 20 years on, to say, well, it happened like this, like it was just smooth. But I think there was always that foresight that this would happen. But from a time perspective, you're never sure how long these interventions happen. And it is difficult to predict because the market can change. Like I said, the pandemic changed it for everybody, and a lot of businesses were in real trouble. And ironically enough, the businesses that were in real trouble were kind of the traditional training businesses, and we're an e-learning business that were the opposite. We were absolutely on fire. Every TV station, radio station wanted to talk to us, right? So, we're thinking, well, we've been here for 15, 16 years. Nobody wanted to know us. And then suddenly we're like, what's going to happen to, academic institutes, and what's going to happen to compliance training, banking and oil and gas industries and all this? And my answer is, well, we've been doing that for a long time. So I think you've got to look at kind of what's the market look like, what does competition look like. As the industry is getting stronger, competition will be more prominent, and then obviously you're always going to have disruptors. So where's the next disruptor? Who's going to come in with something a little bit different, even if they're knocking the price down or whatever it is? It's going to affect some of your decision makings, I guess.
Yeah. So from just to run that back, so you kind of grew the business, got to a successful point, was profitable pretty early within the first 3-4 years, and then from there started to plateau. Then you went and did you go and seek out that investment or that investment partner in the first place at that stage? and they were able to inject some additional funds as well as partnerships that you could use to then grow the business again. At which point the
Yeah,
pandemic hit, which was kind of like right place, right time, although you had been there for 15 years already. And
yeah.
that took you to
And
another
that
level
elevated.
because,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I think
And
it's.
what
I think
did,
we were more proactively looking on that first investment stage because we just thought the timing
mm,
was right and that we'd plateaued a little bit. And then it's like
mm,
we obviously when the initial acquisition took place, we were on a better trajectory. So it did take us into into the next phase simply from a revenue perspective. So yeah, I mean, I guess you've got to identify early enough that you think that that's going to happen. I mean, you never know. I mean, some organisations might always go on that steady growth, but I mean, you know yourself, and
mm,
you and I have talked about this. You get to this stage where you can see the lights there, but
mm,
how and then it's like, where's the risk appetite from your perspective? Are you going to invest personally, and take a risk on losing all the profitability that you've built over the last few years? Are you going to stack up a load of cash and invest that somewhere else and then use that at a later stage? So there's lots of kind of different avenues, but there's always a time where you'll notice
mm.
something, and then it's how can you execute change that takes that next, that gives you that next uplift, and you take that updraft as you move forward.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? It's whilst you're growing a business, you're looking at what other options and routes you can take, and you don't always make the right choice. Like you said, at the top, you're taking the information that you have and making the best sense that you can of it. I think though it is important to make decisions so that you can move fast and with with haste. Otherwise, you can get trapped in no man's land where you're just not making a decision and then it doesn't allow your company to grow. So it sounds like you were able to do that and you were able to look at what routes were available to you, and that's you chose a route that was allowing you to grow and take the company to the next level. What does the business look like now? So you started off with a few e-learning products. Was that mainly
Mm.
focused on compliance? What was your route into market that you found most effective there?
Yeah.
And
So
now,
so a lot.
what does it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. I think a lot of it was ready-made content. So we partner with organisations that had lots of content off the shelf, good to go. Then with the first tranche of investment, we invested in a team, that could develop custom content. So then they build the custom content side. And then we kind of shifted into platforms. So we felt that the e-learning content was king for us. So always for the first early years, it was content. And then we got involved, I don't know, through other vendors. And of course, we're always working, our techs had to, install e-learning content into all sorts of different systems. So we were familiar with all the marketplace and what learning management system softwares there were, but we weren't a reseller of that. So I think the platforms came next. So the kind of HR tech side. So it was
Mm,
e-learning content. Then we partnered with HR tech, and then we went after academic sector, which is more involved in the learning management system for academic institutes and the student management information system and that ecosystem of technology. And I guess really, if you look at the evolution, we're always looking at, well, what is new in the tech world, because then we've kind of introduced blockchain, which is great for you know managing attestation of certifications and things like this. So and I don't want to get in the technical side of it, but that's one. And then you can look at obviously AI, which is ubiquitous nowadays. And in fact, it drives me insane because I'm pretty sure that we're not going to be talking about AI in another year, because it's a bit like saying, oh, I'm going to go to the internet and find something. you don't mention the internet anymore. And I think AI will be the same. If it's not in your product, then what's wrong with you, right? So,
Yeah.
but that is, that is obviously you need to be aware of what it does, how it works. And so you've got to kind of embrace the technology, know what the future's looking like, and, invest time and effort into AR and VR. So you're almost at the forefront of what will happen with that in the next 2 or 3 years, and try to grow elements of that within the framework of what works for you already. So I think we've always been kind of forward thinking on that.
Mm.
On that.
So was that so you started off with content that was something that could be shared and was pre-made, so companies could purchase that. The shift into the tech side of things, was that a decision based off, okay, well, we've got a pool of clients at the moment, and this is how we can add more value to them? Because you mentioned being client focused, and that was how you made those decisions. Was it looking at your existing clients and how you could service them better, or was it that you were looking at the technology and just seeing what's out there that was going to be like what you did with e-learning back 20 years ago, which was be one of the first movers of?
I think if you can sell so many products of this particular style, and then you have to say, well, what else? So you add a learning management system, then another one, and then you I mean, we've always considered ourselves as a consultancy, so we can talk about what are your challenges, what are your problems in that learning and HR space, and then we can say, oh, well, then did you know that we can provide not just one learning management system, but several, to give you some choices, because sometimes from a price point, they can be fields apart. So yeah, you're right. I think one of the things that I said earlier was, I think we decided quite early that we want to be customer focused and customer centric. And so if you have that kind of consultative mindset that supports the client, you're going to find opportunity. But then you have a portfolio build that you need to say, well, what if they ask for this? And again, that's building the talent within the teams, taking somebody that's a typical salesperson through the traditional methods, and talking more about, asking the appropriate questions as a consultant, because then behind all those answers, there might be products. So it's that balance of, being able to do that, but then finding the right fit of the product portfolio, to make sure that it grows, so that, there's you can, not all the time, but sometimes you can see the trajectory of a particular product or service, and it will go there, and then it will go there, then it might go there, then it might shoot there. It's just a bit like my stock exchange. Ultimately, you're looking at something that's gradually going to grow, ultimately over the years. So I think it's always a long-term goal. But yeah, I mean, and then look, so diversification is an important, conversation, because you need to diversify products and services, but at the same time, you need to stick within what you know and what you believe is the right way to invest your time and money and effort into.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of choice out there, and I think that especially nowadays, the amount of technology overload there is insane. Like you mentioned with AI, I actually think your point is correct on that. It's like being connected, like your application being connected to the internet. You don't just, it's just assumed nowadays. It's not something that you mention as a standalone. So I think the same is going to happen with AI.
Yeah, but I also think that, there's all this disruption around how it's going to change everybody's life, and people are going to lose jobs, which is true. But then at the same time, it'll create a lot, as long as people are getting involved in it. So you will use these tools, and you must see that from your perspective in helping organisations grow through social media. I mean, we get onto social media. I mean, how much has that changed, or how much has marketing and sales and lead generation changed since I was kind of walking into big tower buildings, and didn't even have a camera. I'd have to go take a photograph and then go and get it developed to have a list of building, all the companies that were in a building. Then you go from, okay, now I can take, there's a smartphone, I can take a picture of it and then write them down, or, so you go to, to spreadsheets or Excel and things like this. I mean, you and I both know it's a totally different game. So I think if you're not embracing the technologies, and we're not investing in either people like yourselves that are experts in your in your world, then we're going to miss lots and lots of opportunity. And this is what I mean about, you're either going to find talent and bring them in, or you're going to find talent and use them as kind of external resource and service providers. I think that's again part of trying to get away from the day-to-day kind of operational stuff, and trying to step back into the strategic management side of what's next and what's coming. And because I think if you don't have that reflection on where you are and where you need to go and what you need to have from services perspective, who you need to hire, then I think that you're always going to be, like I said, stuck in the in the middle of the woods, I guess.
Yeah. It's very difficult that stage trying to juggle both avenues, and if you've got the right people you can bring on, it makes life a whole lot simpler, I think. So with the
Yeah, but you're gonna.
growth,
Sorry, Alex, but you are gonna grind. I think you're just gonna grind in a different way. I mean, no, this stuff is not easy. I think anybody that starts up and thinks, the kids in a bedroom now can be billionaires within a few years, but that's a freak. I think if you're going to set up business, it's hard slog, and then if you're going to get people on board, is a high risk, and then if you're going to sit on from more of a strategic level, and you're going to be able to see, the woods and the forests and all the rest that you're building, that's great, but it's still a skill set. So you still have to develop that skill set and that mindset. So it's nothing's easy. Is my message on that one.
no, that's a good point you make there, Paul. When it comes to strategic thinking for you, what's important to take into consideration? Especially, let's talk about the sales and marketing for a moment, because I know a lot of edtech companies, their focus is on growth, and you've grown, and you're put realistically in a position a lot of founders want to be in, which is they've sold a company that's successful, they've exited, they've got the money in the bank, and they get to chill out, visiting all the spas like you do and playing around the golf here and there. So
Yeah,
what? Yeah,
or
when
not.
you're
If
looking at,
if you want to continue growing and learning, and I guess that's the answer. It is about growth and mindset and learning. I mean,
mm,
you've got to think what gets you out of bed every day. Yeah, it's great to have free time, and there's certainly a better balance, a work life balance. So, but then I think you need to have drive, and I
mm,
guess that's about interest. So you need to find passion, and I know again that's a bit cliche, but I think just learning some things all the time, and just continuously thinking, well, where would that market shift? And then I just think you've got to be quite brave in speaking to competition. And I've been through so many interesting mergers and acquisition, events through my career, that you can be talking to somebody that is you feel is a real competitor, and the next day they're in the same family. So you
mm,
have to be a little bit cautious of who you. So I think my attitude's always been to try and be open with conversations where you can, to try and gather what's happening in the industry. So know your industry, talk to everybody, learn that inside out. That's absolutely crucial. Then start to think about prediction. So where do you think that industry is going to go? What do you need to change to stay with it, or how could you get ahead of that? So I think there's a lot of creativity and strategic thinking that you need to do. And look, I've been very fortunate because I live and breathe in some of the learning courses. So, it's not, practice what you preach, I guess. For me, it was, if I'm not sure about, I don't know, financial instruments, then I always had somewhere to go. I mean, in fact, we have thousands and thousands of courses. So just to be able to grab those when you want on subject areas that you're interested in, like whether it's AI or blockchain or whatever. So there's learning opportunities all through your career. And if you're, if you're inquisitive and you've got that mindset and that you're open to learn, whether you're learning from a book, a video, a 6-year-old, whatever it is, then I think then things will come to you, and then you'll be able to make, again, more informed decisions. So learning's a massive part of the evolution of any business owner.
Yeah. I remember a lot of times where you have that kind of eureka moment when you unlock a perspective that you weren't aware of before, maybe because of something that you've taken in, so either someone you've spoken to or
Yeah.
some information that you've read through or a course you've taken, and it's giving you that eureka moment that helps you to position your business better. I remember one of the lessons I learned was this guy called Alex Hormozy. He spoke about just how you structure a business and how you price your business. And a lot of people are scared to actually just price themselves at a rate that will make them able to be successful rather than being in a hamster wheel that doesn't allow them to actually scale. And alongside that and a lot of other perspective shifts allowed me to take a step back in my business and actually view it and be like, oh, okay, this was one of the pieces of the puzzle that I was missing, that that new information gave me. Was there any times that you can remember where you had that kind of eureka moment, and how did that
Yeah.
impact the
Yeah,
business?
I think so. I think, again, surrounding yourself with the right people is really important. Being open to meeting people and discussing things, finding mentors, and I think that's a difficult one. I think now we've got coaches everywhere, which is great. I think that,
Mm.
I guess, back in the day that wasn't as popular to find a coach and mentor, and now I think people are seeking that out. These conversations are great. I mean, there's podcasts for everything these days, so I think seeking that out. But you have to be proactive, and then you have to get the right people. And I think 9 times out of 10, a mentor will just tell a story, and then that'll trigger another idea for you. And I see that happening when you and I get together and we'll talk about something, and I don't think I'm adding any value to what you're doing, and then you go, oh. And then the week after, you've gone, oh, by the way, I did this, and it was based on something that you said with something that wasn't necessarily relevant to me, but I did that. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of benchmarking across different industries, and you can really do that, just from having conversations like this with people that have had some success and also had some failures as well, because not everything kind of works out, and there are some kind of investments that I've made that have not been as from a commercial standpoint, but they've been probably more value in what I've learned about that particular industry or whatever. So yeah, I mean, seek it out, just seek out the knowledge, and keep having conversations.
Yeah, the lessons that you learn from failure, I think, are sometimes even more important than the wins, and they're more of an investment towards future wins, because you can, I think, from it elevate where you are at. Um, Not necessarily that would have been the case if you didn't have that type of challenge or obstacle in front of you. With expert learning, for example, what was one of those points in time where you struggled, or there was that challenge that presented itself? Can you remember any times where you was at kind of this junction point, and maybe it hurt a bit and stung, but you was able to
Yeah,
bring yourself back up from it?
no, I don't think there was like oh my god, this is really bad, and we need to
Mm.
do X, Y, Z. But you're always, I think the biggest difference now for me is that there's there's a whole load of pressure around, that's gone from making decisions. I can go to the CEO and talk about how expert learning is now, and give some advice, and if he doesn't take it, doesn't matter. But when you're responsible for making decisions around other people's livelihood, I think there's a lot of pressure with that. So I'm always conscious of that you can make some decisions along the way that might hurt people within the business that you're trying to grow. Which is, again, probably, for me, the best part of running a business is the people, and the worst part of running a business is the people. So it's I think that weighs it up, that it's the people all the time. So I don't think there's one event, but I think there's a time where you're going to say, if we don't do this, then maybe we'll have to let a couple of these guys go. And that was sleepless nights for me, because you want to impire, you manage people in with all the enthusiasm. And Jack Welch, the CEO of the century, the General Electric guy, I was fortunate enough to meet, and that was the thing that I took away from that meeting, that to manage people out with the same enthusiasm that you manage them in, because you get excited about somebody, this is, they're going to do this, it's going to be great, and then you almost have built that person up so high. How are they ever going to elevate on that? Because you're always saying it's going to be this person's going to change our business. So I think, and then manage them out with the same enthusiasm, because you never know when they come back around, or they're working for another organisation that call you back. I think the same with customers. You lose a customer, and you can be, well, they didn't, they were never going to pay that much for our services. But actually, if you leave it on good terms, say, we're still around. If you need us again, come back to us. So I think, those kind of critical breaking points weren't as bad as some organisations, but they're bad enough to give you sleepless nights, because then you've got to make some decision in some way or the other. And there's several times through, our business journey, that you have to make those decisions, because if you don't, if this, then that, it's like programming language. If this happens, then that will happen. So if you can predict something along that line. But we were fortunate to keep a pretty healthy team. We've got very clean windows of, people appreciating how open and honest, and, we had a real open door policy, so people could come in. And that's not always the best. I wouldn't, recommend that to every organisation, but we've certainly, in our organisation, and because we were, relatively small, 30, 40 people, it's not, you can still manage that. But that's a cultural thing. And then as you get to the next level and a few hundred people, then the culture's, harder to get everybody together and to keep that open door policy. So you have to put a couple of blocks in there, and process and policy. So I'm a big believer that sometimes, there'll be a creak in the business, and then it's like, usually it's a policy tweak. So you change a policy, and operationally that helps you to safeguard a few, crumblings in the building. A few cracks appear, and it's like, okay, should we just, wallpaper that piece, or should we actually get some, should we do something else that saves the infrastructure? So I think sustainability is always going to be a key word of noticing those little cracks. But no, we didn't have any demolition or any floods or anything that was serious enough to take down a really bad path where we were thinking we had to close down. No, we were blessed in that sense, and maybe because it's the environment where we are, and that kind of, younger environment where people are always kind of on the up, and people are pushing each other forward, which is a great environment to be in.
Yeah, but no, exactly what you said. It's those times when you've got sleepless nights, and it doesn't mean that it could be in hindsight, not the biggest issue in the world, but it's still something that is important to you. And from that, I take the importance of managing someone out. Like, that's something that you don't hear too often. And I remember when I was in my younger years, sometimes I wasn't the most appreciative of the opportunities I was given, because you're just young, you're going off to another role. And I think only when I learned, or I started to run a business and have people who were really well on the in and out, and that encouraged me as well, because you never know what that relationship will turn into in the future. And I think you just have that mindset from being seasoned in the space. It's a very long term mindset, isn't it? It's like
Yes.
something that you need to be aware of. And I don't think you're always aware of that. Same with customers, right? If you have a customer there and they're maybe not in a position to continue, being able to maintain a relationship, I
Yes.
think, a sign of strength that will only build your brand
Yes.
and your
And I
company,
think we
because
came
people.
across that a lot in the pandemic, where we'd say, we keep the service open, so don't worry about that at the moment. So there's a lot of things that you could do. I think doing the right thing then, and again,
Mm,
is that a customer centric thing, or is that just an ethical
mm,
side of the business? But you're right. I think it's, but we keep harking back to relationships, and I think that business is about relationships and building effective relationships. Sometimes relationships that you think, yeah, we're just not getting on. This is not a good relationship. But then you find something. You find something in that. It kind of grows, and I'm surprised with some of the friends and colleagues and partnerships that I wasn't sure at the start whether I was their cup of tea, or do you know what I mean? And then over time it kind of builds to something that's really special. And I think that's just about effective communication, and how clear and open and honest and authentic you are with other people, and getting the right people in that environment, and surrounding yourself with those, then you'll find a way. But yeah, you're right. I think we can make mistakes and be a little bit emotional, and
mm.
it's so difficult not to be, because, like I said, a lot of people can depend on your decisions. But then consult everybody. Everybody from the guy that makes the tea to to the CEO. Just make sure that everybody's consulted, and I guess, yeah, not all organisations are like that culturally, and they try to be, but and it's easier in some industries than others. But I guess that should be the aim, to try and hear
Mm.
everybody's opinions and then make informed decisions.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we had a kind of, I was responsible for a bit of a reunion with you and some of
Yeah,
your colleagues from the industry, right? And everyone was smiley faces and happy to see each other, which is a good sign of good relationships. And that's
yeah,
what I mean by.
that was great. I think just for everybody else to know, and again, this is kudos to you, Alex, and trying to bring like-minded people together. And you said to me, "Oh, I've got a few people that I think, it'd be just worth having an hour chat about what you're all doing." And we all got on the call, and went, "Oh, it's you!" So we all knew each other, because it's all, of course, it's a small world, isn't it? When you're in an industry like the learning and HR tech industry, then it's a small world anyway. So I think
Yeah.
it's, but that was great, and thank you for that, because I think just kind of hooking up with people that I hadn't seen for quite a few years, and seeing where they're at and where their journey's taken them, was fascinating. So, and again, I think that's you recognizing it's almost like, well, I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but I want to bring some people together, and then that sparked a couple of ideas that you had around, well, how do you take that and use that in your own sort of business. So I think, yeah, I think you've got to be thinking like that, and that's back to the creativity of just trying some things and seeing if that would go anywhere. So yeah, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's a bit of serendipity. I think that it kind of brings it full circle, right? It's relationships, it's learnings. I took a lot from that meeting, just being a kind of fly on the wall, even, and just hearing you guys talk about your experience in the space and where you feel the space is going as a whole. I guess we're up for the hour, but one thing I would like just to end it on is that vision of the future, because you're actively investing, you've been in the space, so you've got a good bearing on where it's been, where it is now, and you've been a good predictor of what decisions you've had to make to grow the business. So for you, where do you think the space is heading when it comes to edtech and areas that maybe people need to be focused on? Because of, in
Yeah,
your opinion, let's say, you feel that these are some areas that will pave the way. Um,
yeah, sure. I think, look, that I think everybody's got higher expectations of things now. It's
mm,
funny we talk about AI. I guess my message is like follow the tech, because if
mm,
you're in HR and learning tech, follow the tech, see where that will go. Even in things like VR that I still believe. I believe massively in. I'm a massive fan.
mm,
And I think eventually they'll not be like big helmets that you have to wear, and we'll get to have kind of lightweight but still immersive, incredible experiences in some form or other. So follow the tech. I would say that I think
mm,
that's where the future is, whether it's AR, VR, AI is still a big part of everything. I think you've still got to, understand what that potential is and how that could be used within your environment. Because regardless, everybody could use it in some way or shape or form. Whether it's you from helping organisations to to grow and have more lead generation, you want as many hands on deck as you can, and AI is certainly going to do that.
mm.
Especially in the bigger data space, so it's more effective. At that super AI level where there's a lot more big data. So I think technology is going to drive us a lot of the time, but then it's being creative around, well, what does that do for me? It's like, well, here's a new tool. You can either bury your head in the sand, or you can get your gloves on and start digging deeper and saying, oh, I want to learn that. I want to let me know about that. I could program that and find your route that way. So again, it goes back to the education of it. But yeah, I see that tech is going to constantly be. It's ironic that tech is going to be, the thing that drives humans, right?
Mm.
So the new tech will drive us to be creative around, how do we use it. I heard a great quote the other day that somebody said that about AI. They want AI to do the cleaning and washing, and so they can get on with the creativity, and so the mundane jobs, and actually they're doing the creative work in design and things like this, and all the designers are going, I just want them to wash up for me and make
Yeah,
breakfast.
yeah, listen.
So I think that's exact. But then you got to go, okay, you got to lean into that. Well, how can I make something happen, because that is now my tool set. I think that people think that AI is really easy as well. And it is, if you want AI to be at that level and produce
Mm,
that result. But if you want it to be really effective, then you need to learn prompt engineering and get better at it. So it's still learning software, even though you're using generative AI. So I think again we're kind of driven by where the tech is going to take us. We have to try to see where that goes before it goes there, and then use it as a tool.
yeah, it's. I think once you're immersed, like you said, getting your gloves on. Once you're immersed in the technology, and you're overlaying your skill set on top of that new technology, and your experiences and knowledge of the field, is then how do you combine them? It's like a Venn diagram of AI or VR and AR and edtech and your experience in maybe a specific industry or niche, because I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of exciting projects out there, even that I'm encountering that are utilizing these types of softwares you're talking about. And I think that there's always that common struggle between, okay, we've got all the cool technology, but how do we apply it in the very best way that the market's going to appreciate? And that kind of circling back again, it's the conceptual sell at this point, isn't it?
Yeah,
is that
agree.
most companies out there won't understand it or won't have the understanding of how it's best applied, or it's just too far away for them to comprehend. So the companies who are going to be the best winners are the ones that are able to merge the most advanced and make it acceptable, so that it can be taken up and you get a few quick wins, and then from there you'll be in a position much like yourself where there's certain instances that happen, certain just life events, world events that happen that just to help you accelerate that growth. But it's been very interesting, and I've learned a lot. Again, as usual, Paul, picking your brains and just understanding how you see things. So I appreciate the time, and I look forward to doing another one of these because I've got a few other questions that we didn't get around to getting through.
Sure.
But yeah, for next time, looking forward to it. So I appreciate it.
Give me a shout, mate. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks for the opportunity, Alex, and have a good day. Take care, mate.
You too, Paul.